Okay, here's a question to kick us off. What if the most important global conflicts of the next decade aren't playing out where any of us are currently looking? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something our research calls invisible battlefields. It's this new, frankly, unsettling type of conflict. It's unfolding in domains most of us don't even really perceive day to day.
And what's really striking when you dig into the source material is how intelligence agencies worldwide are already operating on these fronts. They're basically setting the stage for potential global crises, but without a single traditional shot being fired. It's quite something.
So, our mission today, to
Yeah.
get you up to speed fast on these hidden geopolitical flashpoints. What are they? Where are they?
It's definitely a critical shift we need to understand. I mean, right now, all the headlines, all the focus, it's on the familiar stuff, isn't it?
Right.
You know, the horrible stalemate in Ukraine, China's moves regarding Taiwan, the constant instability in the Middle East. These are the conflicts we kind of get. They feel visible.
Right, the 20th century playbook stuff. Land, sea, air. But focusing only on those, according to the research, creates this domain blindness, is the term used. We're fixated on the traditional battlefield, so we're missing these three other areas. Areas that are far more vulnerable, actually.
Exactly. And these are the places where the major powers, the U.S., China, Russia, are already deep into these high-stakes covert clashes. It's not just a shadow war. It's almost fought in the dark.
A war fought in the dark. I like that.
Well, the key insight here is how these conflicts work. They use advanced tech to target the unseen infrastructure that, well, everything in modern life relies on.
Right.
And the potential fallout, as we'll get into, it's potentially devastating. It really is.
Okay, let's do it. Let's pull back the curtain on these three zones. They are disturbingly vulnerable, and like you said, the secret operations are already happening. You know, after digging into this material, I'll have to say, you might not see how the world works quite the same way again. So, first up, let's dive deep, literally, the undersea battlefield, or maybe more accurately, the war on data.
Yeah, this one's fascinating because we all talk about the cloud, right? Sounds so ethereal, like data floating in the air.
Totally. Wireless, invisible.
But that's the big misunderstanding. The real fragility of the global internet. It isn't software code, it's physical. It's this huge network, over 500 fiber optic cables snaking across the ocean floor.
500.
And here's the kicker. These actual pipes, some no thicker than like a garden hose, they carry over 99% of all international data.
99%. You're talking everything, financial transactions, government comms.
Streaming movies, social media, military communications, banking, everything. And despite being so vital, they're incredibly exposed, just laid out there in remote deep-sea trenches, often completely unpatrolled.
That seems incredibly risky. So how do the intelligence agencies, the spies, exploit this? Is it Bond villains with mini-subs?
Well, maybe not quite mini-subs, but it's definitely cloak and dagger stuff. And interestingly, it's a direct line from Cold War espionage. The sources point back to things like the U.S. Navy's Ivy Bells operation, where they put these huge wiretaps on Soviet undersea cables way back when.
All right, I've heard of that.
So today, it's evolved. Agencies use these very advanced, quiet, autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs.
Okay.
And they basically have two jobs. One, mapping and tapping, sneaking down there, installing devices to intercept data flows. Two, strategic vulnerability assessment, which sounds technical, but it means finding the exact points where cutting a cable would cause the absolute maximum chaos, with the minimum chance of getting caught.
Okay, that's chilling. So the research paints a scenario, right? A potential crisis, this data blackout.
It does. Imagine a place like Taiwan,
Mm.
already under immense pressure.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it's cut off from the global internet. Not a cyber attack, which leaves digital fingerprints, but someone physically severing its main 3 or 4 undersea cables. Poof. Gone.
What happens then?
Total chaos. Almost instantly. The economy freezes, markets crash, basic communications fail, the government itself is isolated, maybe can't even talk effectively within the country.
And the attacker.
That's the scary strategic genius of it, in a dark way. Implausible deniability. The attacker just says, who? Us. Must have been an earthquake, or, oh, an anchor must have accidentally dragged across it.
So you can't prove who did it.
Exactly. It breeds paranoia, suspicion, miscalculation. The risk of things escalating wildly, maybe even to conventional conflict, goes way up. All from an attack no one actually saw happen deep underwater.
Wow. Okay. From the bottom of the ocean, let's go way up, to the black of space, the orbital battlefield, the war on GPS, as some call it, low Earth orbit, ELIO, packed with satellites.
Thousands of them now, yeah. It's the new high ground, strategically speaking, and people think satellites. They think navigation, GPS, right?
Yeah.
Positioning, navigation, and timing, PNT.
Which is important, obviously.
Yeah. Hugely important, but it goes deeper. What the research emphasizes is that these LEO satellites, particularly the GPS constellation, provide the hyper-precise timing signals. Our entire global financial system relies on that timing. Power grids need it for synchronization. And almost every piece of advanced military kit, drones, smart bombs, ships, planes, needs those timing signals to function correctly.
So disrupting GPS isn't just about maps going wonky.
No, it's about potentially triggering systemic collapse in key sectors.
Okay, that's a lot. So if they're that critical, what are intelligence agencies doing up there? Are we talking space weapons?
We are, absolutely. It sounds like sci-fi, but it's real policy and development. Agencies are heavily invested in counter-space capabilities. It's way beyond just spy satellites looking down. The material talks about these inspector satellites, sometimes called killer satellites.
Killer satellites?
Yeah, small, very maneuverable spacecraft. They can sneak up close to an adversary satellite, and then they could disable it physically, maybe break off an antenna, or blind its sensors with a laser, or just jam its communication so it can't send or receive signals.
That's pretty direct.
But there are subtler things, too, even more insidious, perhaps. Hijacking the satellite's control system, or subtly spoofing its data, feeding the enemy false information.
Spoofing, like changing the GPS signal.
Exactly. Imagine altering GPS coordinates by just, say, a few hundred meters. Your enemy thinks their smart bomb is on target, but it hits a civilian building instead, or misses entirely. Devastatingly effective.
Good Lord. So this completely reframes future conflict. It means the first hostile act, the first shot in a major crisis, it probably happens in space.
Almost certainly. If you can knock out or even just degrade your opponent's GPS network, you blind them. Their high-tech military edge. Gone. Drones fall out of the sky, bombs go astray, navigation fails.
That creates a massive advantage for a conventional attack right after.
A decisive window, potentially. But it also creates this incredibly dangerous strategic problem. The use it or lose it dilemma. Meaning, if you suspect your satellites are about to be attacked, maybe you see an inspector satellite maneuvering close.
Yeah.
You might feel forced to strike first, to take out their satellites before they take out yours.
So it incentivizes preemption.
Hugely.
Yeah.
It could lead to this incredibly rapid, destructive escalation that starts hundreds of miles up, but obviously has catastrophic consequences down here on Earth.
Okay. Undersea cables, orbital satellites. Where's the third invisible battlefield? This one surprised me when I read the research. The agricultural battlefield. The war on resources. We're talking food, water.
Exactly, food and water. Specifically, the highly optimized just-in-time global food supply chain we all rely on, and also critical shared water resources. Think major rivers crossing borders, underground aquifers.
How does that become a battlefield?
Well, the underlying driver here, according to the analysis, is increasing resource scarcity, often amplified by climate change. Food and water stop being just commodities. They become strategic levers, even weapons.
So intelligence agencies are looking at farming vulnerabilities.
They're shifting focus, yes. Yeah. It's moving beyond just tracking armies and missiles. Now, it's also resource intelligence, asking, where are our rivals' agricultural weak points? How secure is their water supply?
Okay, so how would a covert attack actually work in this domain? It seems harder to hide than cutting a cable or zapping a satellite.
You'd think so, but the possibilities outlined are pretty disturbing. One method is biosabotage.
Biosabotage, like biological weapons.
But targeted very specifically. Imagine covertly introducing a genetically modified crop disease, say, a super virulent strain of wheat rust fungus into a rival nation's primary grain-producing region. Something designed to wipe out their harvest.
That's horrifying.
It is. Another route is cyber attacks, targeting agricultural infrastructure. So much farming is smart now, right? Automated irrigation, computerized grain silos, and distribution hubs.
Yeah, precision agriculture.
Precisely. So hacking into those systems to disrupt irrigation schedules, spoil stored grain, mess up distribution logistics. You could cause massive food supply disruptions that way.
Yeah. So the crisis scenario here isn't soldiers marching in, it's a manufactured famine.
That's the term used, yes. A government suddenly facing inexplicable food shortages, prices for basic goods skyrocketing, hyperinflation, empty shelves.
The result being?
Predictable, really. Mass civil unrest, riots. Potentially, the government could collapse, be overthrown from within. all without a single bomb dropping.
And again, the deniability factor.
It's huge here. The aggressor state just points fingers elsewhere. Oh, it must be climate change. It's just poor local farm management, a natural pest outbreak.
Plausible excuses?
Very plausible. This kind of warfare is terrifyingly attractive from a statecraft perspective. It's relatively cheap compared to a conventional military campaign. It's incredibly effective at destabilizing a rival. And crucially, it's almost impossible to definitively prove who did it.
Cheap, effective, deniable. That's a scary combination.
It really is. It represents a potentially fundamental shift in how state power might be exercised in the 21st century.
Okay, so let's recap. We've covered the 3 invisible battlefields highlighted in the research. Undersea, impacting data. Orbital, impacting GPS and timing. And agricultural, impacting food and water resources. It seems clear from everything we've looked at that these hidden domains, these are the real front lines for future conflict, aren't they? Where intelligence agencies are already playing a dangerous game.
I think that's the core takeaway. Understanding these hidden dynamics isn't just, interesting trivia. It's actually crucial if you want to grasp modern global power competition. It forces us to rethink what we mean by security and stability.
Yeah.
These shadow wars completely challenge those old assumptions.
It's definitely shifted my perspective. So, a final thought for you listening. How does knowing about these invisible battlefields change your view when you see global events unfold or even domestic issues crop up? Maybe supply chain disruptions or strange economic fluctuations? Could the real cause be hidden, operating quietly beneath the surface in one of these invisible domains? It's certainly something to think about, isn't it? Makes you wonder what else is happening that we just don't see.